I was 6 months pregnant when I heard a strange sound coming from my husband's study room. At first, I tried to ignore it. It was just another Thursday evening, and everything seemed normal, or at least that's what I told myself. The house was unusually quiet that night, too quiet. The kind of silence that makes every small noise sound louder than it should. The refrigerator hummed softly in the kitchen. The wind brushed against the window blinds, making them whisper against the glass. And somewhere down the hallway, a sound came from behind my husband's study room door. I remember standing there for a moment, one hand resting on my belly, feeling my baby shift slightly inside me. Something about that moment felt wrong. Obi had been working in his study room for hours, like he usually did. He was always working on something: business plans, phone calls, late-night emails. It wasn't unusual for him to shut himself away while I relaxed in the living room, but that night felt different. The air in the house felt heavy, like something was about to happen. Maybe it was my pregnancy hormones making me emotional. Maybe I was just tired. Or maybe my instincts were trying to warn me, because that night my life was about to change forever. Earlier that evening, everything had seemed completely normal. I had been sitting on the couch with a blanket wrapped around my legs, scrolling through my phone while a soft television program played in the background. Obi had kissed my forehead before disappearing into his study room. "Just a few hours," he had said. I smiled and nodded, but someone else was in the house that night too. Obi's mother, Lillian. She had been staying with us for the past 6 months, while renovations were being completed on her apartment in the city. At first, I didn't mind it. In fact, I was happy to help. Family was important to me, and I believed that welcoming her into our home was the right thing to do. Lillian had always been a strong woman, confident, sometimes a little too involved in Obi's life, but I tried to be patient with her. After all, she was his mother. Still, there was something about her presence that sometimes made me uncomfortable. She had a way of hovering around Obi, offering advice he didn't ask for, watching him closely, almost like she was afraid of losing him. I told myself it was normal, a mother worrying about her son. Nothing more. At least, that's what I believed at the time. Over the past few weeks, however, something had changed. Obi had been different. Small things at first. He became impatient more easily. Sometimes he would snap over small issues that never used to bother him. And strangely, those moments almost always happened when his mother was nearby. At first, I blamed stress. Running a business isn't easy. Preparing for a baby isn't easy either. But there were moments when I would catch Lillian watching him in a way that made me uneasy. A look that lingered too long. A smile that felt strange. Whenever I noticed it, I would quickly shake the thought away. I didn't want to think badly about someone who was family. I trusted them both, completely. That night, I was exhausted. Pregnancy had drained my energy more than I expected. My feet ached, my back hurt, and all I wanted was to crawl into bed and sleep. So I slowly got up from the couch and began walking down the hallway toward our bedroom. The house was dimly lit. Most of the lights were off, except for a faint glow coming from Obi's study room. The door was slightly open. That wasn't unusual. Sometimes he forgot to close it all the way. As I walked past it, I planned to simply continue to the bedroom. But then I heard something, a soft rustling sound, like fabric moving. I stopped walking. Maybe Obi was just adjusting his chair or moving papers around. But then I heard it again, a sound that made my heart skip. It was faint, low, almost like a whisper, followed by something that sounded disturbingly like a moan. My entire body went still. I felt a cold wave move through my chest. No, that couldn't be what I thought it was. I stood there in the hallway, staring at the slightly open door. My mind tried to explain it away. Maybe he was on a call. Maybe someone on phone was talking. Maybe the television was on. But deep inside, something told me that explanation wasn't right. The baby shifted again in my stomach. My breathing became slow and careful. And then I heard another voice, soft, female. Obi, please. My blood ran cold. I knew that voice. I would recognize it anywhere. It was Lillian, my mother-in-law. For a moment, my brain refused to process what I had just heard. It didn't make sense. It couldn't make sense. What could she possibly be doing in Obi's study room at this time of night? And why did her voice sound like that? My heart began pounding harder. With every passing second, the hallway suddenly felt too small, too quiet, too suffocating. I told myself there had to be a simple explanation. There had to be. But something deep inside me needed to know the truth. Even if that truth destroyed everything. Slowly, carefully, I stepped closer to the door. Each step felt heavier than the last. My fingers trembled as I reached toward the door frame. The light inside the study flickered slightly, casting strange shadows across the hallway wall. My breathing became shallow. I could hear the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears. And then I heard Obi's voice. Low, shaky. I can't keep doing this, he said. My stomach dropped. Doing what? Silence followed. Then he spoke again. I have a wife. I felt my chest tighten. The hallway felt like it was spinning around me. What was happening inside that room? Another whisper followed. Lillian's voice again. Soft, close. I know, she said gently. My vision blurred for a moment. I'm the only one who makes you feel this way. My hand slowly pushed the door open just a little wider, just enough to see inside. And in that moment, my entire world shattered. My hand trembled as I pushed the study room door open just a little wider. Only a small gap, just enough to see inside. The desk lamp illuminated the room with a soft yellow glow, casting long shadows across the walls. Papers were scattered across Obi's desk, and his laptop screen flickered faintly. But that wasn't what froze my body. What I saw in that moment made the air leave my lungs. Obi was sitting in his chair, but he wasn't working. His posture was stiff and uncomfortable, like someone who had been caught doing something wrong. And standing directly in front of him was his mother, Lillian. She had her back slightly turned toward the door, adjusting the front of her dress, as if she had just hurriedly fixed it. My mind struggled to understand what my eyes were seeing. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe I walked in at the wrong moment. Maybe Something innocent had just happened. But then Obi spoke again. "I can't keep doing this," he said quietly. His voice was shaking. "I have a wife." My heart felt like it dropped through the floor. I couldn't breathe. The room felt like it was closing in on me. Lillian didn't move away from him. Instead, she leaned closer, too close. Her hand gently rested on his shoulder. "I know," she whispered. Her voice was soft, calm, almost comforting. "I'm the only one who makes you feel this way." Those words hit me like a punch to the chest. My vision blurred for a moment. This couldn't be real. My brain refused to accept it. My husband and his own mother. No. This had to be some kind of misunderstanding. Some twisted joke. Something that would make sense in a few seconds. But deep inside, a horrible truth was beginning to form, and it terrified me. I didn't realize how long I had been standing there. Seconds, maybe a full minute. My body had gone completely numb. The only thing I could hear was my own heartbeat pounding loudly in my ears. Inside the room, Obi looked miserable. His hands were gripping the edge of the desk. He wouldn't even look at her. "I hate myself for this," he muttered. "I don't know what's wrong with me." Lillian gently brushed her hand down his arm. "There's nothing wrong with you," she said softly. "You've always belonged to me." My stomach twisted. Belonged to her? What kind of mother says that to her son? A wave of nausea washed over me. My baby shifted again inside my stomach, and instinctively I placed my hand on my belly, as if protecting my child from what I was witnessing. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to leave, to run, to get away from that door. But I couldn't move. I needed to understand. I needed to know how deep this nightmare went. Obi suddenly leaned back in his chair, rubbing his face with both hands. "This is wrong," he said. "This is completely wrong." His voice cracked. Lillian's expression hardened slightly. She stepped closer again. "So what?" she said quietly. "You think I don't know that?" Her tone had changed. It wasn't apologetic anymore. It was possessive. "You've always needed me," she continued. "And I've always been the only one who truly understands you." Obi shook his head slowly. "No, Chioma understands me," he said. My heart tightened hearing my name. For a moment, just a brief moment, I hoped he would stand up and end whatever madness this was. But he didn't. Instead, he whispered something that shattered the last piece of hope I had left. "But I can't stop," he admitted. Those 4 words felt like a knife sliding through my chest. He couldn't stop, which meant this wasn't the first time. This had been happening before tonight. Maybe for weeks, maybe for months, maybe even longer. The thought made my entire body tremble. Suddenly, my elbow bumped into the small table in the hallway. Before I could react, the decorative vase sitting on top of it tipped over. It crashed onto the floor with a loud shattering sound. The noise echoed through the house. Inside the study room, both Obi and Ngozi turned instantly toward the door. Our eyes met. Obi's face drained of all color. "Chioma," he whispered. Time seemed to freeze. The horror in his eyes told me everything. He knew exactly what I had seen. He knew exactly what I had heard, and there was no explanation that could fix it. For a brief moment, no one moved. Then Obi stood up quickly, knocking his chair backward. Chioma, wait. But I didn't wait. My body finally snapped out of its frozen state. I turned and ran down the hallway as fast as I could. My heart was pounding violently in my chest. Tears blurred my vision as I stumbled toward our bedroom. I could hear Obi's footsteps behind me. Chioma, please, he called, but I couldn't listen. I couldn't hear anything he had to say. Not after what I had just seen. Not after what I had just learned. I reached the bedroom door and slammed it shut behind me. Then I locked it. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the key. A second later, Obi's footsteps stopped outside. Chioma, he said through the door. His voice sounded panicked. Honey, please open the door. I sank slowly to the floor, my back against the door. My breathing was uneven. My chest hurt. I pressed my hands over my ears, but his voice still came through. I can explain, he said. Explain? Explain? What? Explain how my husband had been secretly involved with his own mother. Explain how they had both betrayed me under the same roof. My stomach twisted violently. I suddenly felt sick. Everything inside me felt like it was collapsing. Outside the door, Obi knocked again. Softly this time. Chioma, please talk to me. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Words didn't exist anymore. Only pain, only disbelief, only betrayal. Minutes passed, maybe longer. I sat there on the floor, staring blankly at the opposite wall. The room felt dark, even though the lamp was on. My life had just shattered in a way I never thought possible. My husband and his mother, the two people I trusted most in this house. The two people who were supposed to be family, and now everything felt poisoned. Everything felt broken. And deep down, a terrifying question began forming in my mind. How long had this been happening? I don't know how long I sat there on the floor. Minutes, maybe hours. Time felt strange after that moment. Everything around me seemed distant, like I was watching someone else's life instead of living my own. Outside the bedroom door, Obi was still there. At first, he kept knocking gently. Chioma, please talk to me. His voice sounded broken, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. Every time I closed my eyes, the same image replayed in my mind. Glory standing in front of him, adjusting her dress, the way she leaned toward him, the way he said he couldn't stop. My stomach twisted again. I placed my hands protectively over my belly, feeling my baby move slightly. The small movement reminded me of something important. I wasn't alone, no matter what happened next. I had to be strong for my child. After a while, Obi stopped knocking. For a few minutes, the house became completely silent. I wondered if he had finally left. But then his voice returned, softer this time. I know you're hurt, he said quietly through the door, and you have every right to be. His words sounded heavy, like they were being dragged out of him. I never meant for any of this to happen. I stared blankly at the floor. Never meant for it to happen? What kind of excuse was that? Something like that doesn't just happen. It doesn't appear out of nowhere. It grows in secret. It hides in shadows. It lies to the people who trust you. My chest tightened with anger. For the first time since I ran into the room, I felt something stronger than shock. I felt rage. Eventually, the silence returned again. The house felt emptier than ever. I slowly stood up and walked toward the bed, my legs weak beneath me. Sitting on the edge of the mattress, I reached for my phone. I didn't know what else to do. I needed someone to talk to. Someone outside of this house. Someone who could help me make sense of what I had just seen. So I texted my closest friend. Her name was Ada. My fingers trembled as I typed. Ada, something terrible just happened. A few seconds passed. Then the typing bubbles appeared. What happened? Are you okay? I hesitated before answering. Even writing the words felt impossible, but I forced myself. I called Obi with his mother. For a moment, the screen stayed silent. Then her reply came. Wait, what? I closed my eyes tightly. I didn't want to explain. I didn't want to relive it again. But I had to. So I told her everything. The sounds in the hallway, the voices, the moment I looked inside the room, and when I finished typing the last message, my hands were shaking again. Ada replied almost immediately. Ma, you need to leave that house. I stared at the message for a long time. Leave? The thought felt overwhelming. This was my home, my marriage, my life. But at the same time, the house no longer felt safe. It no longer felt like the place where my future lived. It felt like the place where everything had died. Hours passed slowly. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Occasionally, I could hear quiet footsteps moving through the hallway outside. Sometimes I thought it was Obi. Other times it sounded like Lillian. Neither of them knocked again. Eventually, exhaustion began to take over. My body was drained. My emotions were empty. Sometime during the night, I finally fell asleep. When I woke up, sunlight was pouring through the bedroom window. For a moment, I felt confused, disoriented, like waking up after a terrible dream. But then the memories rushed back all at once, and the weight of reality settled heavily on my chest again. Slowly, I sat up in bed. The house was quiet, too quiet. After a few minutes, I heard footsteps approaching the bedroom door. My heart began beating faster again. The door opened slowly. But it wasn't Obi, it was Lillian. She stepped inside cautiously, her expression tense. Her face looked different from the night before. She looked older somehow, more tired, more fragile. For the first time since I had known her, she looked ashamed. Oma, she said softly. Her voice trembled slightly. I know you're hurt. I didn't respond. I simply watched her, trying to understand how this woman had become someone I didn't recognize. She stepped a little closer. I never wanted things to go this far, she continued. Her words felt hollow. I shook my head slowly. You never wanted it? I said quietly. My voice sounded unfamiliar to my own ears. Cold, empty. Then why did it happen? Lillian lowered her eyes. For a moment, she didn't answer. Then she whispered something that made my stomach twist again. It started years ago. Years. The word echoed in my mind like thunder. Years. Which meant this nightmare had existed long before I even entered Obi's life. Before I married him, before I became pregnant, before I trusted both of them with my entire future, the betrayal suddenly felt even deeper, even darker. Before I could say anything else, another figure appeared in the doorway. Obi. He looked terrible. His eyes were red and swollen from lack of sleep. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair messy. He looked like someone who hadn't rested all night. He stepped inside slowly, as if he wasn't sure he was welcome. "Chioma," he said quietly. My chest tightened hearing my name again. "I'm sorry." The words sounded sincere, but they also sounded useless. Sorry couldn't erase what I saw. Sorry couldn't rebuild the trust that had been destroyed. Sorry couldn't undo the pain sitting inside my chest. "I love you," he continued. His voice cracked. "And I hate myself for hurting you." I stared at him for several seconds. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to cry. But another part of me felt strangely calm. Maybe because the shock had already done its damage. "I don't want to hear excuses," I said quietly. Obi lowered his head. "I'm not making excuses," he said. "I just want a chance to fix this. Fix it." The phrase sounded almost impossible. How do you fix something like that? How do you repair a betrayal that twisted and unnatural? The room fell silent again. All three of us stood there, trapped in the same moment. Finally, I spoke again. "I need time," I said. Both of them looked up at me. "I don't know what happens next," I continued. "I don't know if this marriage can survive." My voice felt steady now, almost detached. "But I need time to think." Obi nodded slowly. Pain filled his eyes. "I understand," he whispered. Lillian wiped tears from her face quietly. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Obi stepped back toward the door. "I'll give you the time you need," he said. And with that, he left the room. Lillian followed him shortly after, leaving me alone again. I walked slowly to the window and looked outside. The morning sun was bright. Birds moved across the sky. The world outside looked completely normal, but inside my heart, everything had changed. My marriage, my family, my future, nothing would ever be the same again. And as I placed my hand gently on my belly, I realized something. The next decision I made would shape not only my life, but my child's life as well. And I still didn't know what that decision would be. If you were in Chioma's position, would you forgive Obi? Or would you walk away from the marriage forever? Tell me what you would do in the comments.